Okay, so I was taking a walk with Scarlett the other day, and she said something about like, they're going to love me because I'm perfect, right? I'll be perfect then, or something like that. And I was hearing her say that, and I told her, I was like, oh, baby, nobody is perfect. And she was like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, nobody is perfect. We all make mistakes, and that's a good thing. I was like, that's how we learn. That's how we grow. Those are all good things. And she looked me straight in the eyes and goes, it's good to make mistakes. And I said, yeah, absolutely. That's how you learn, right? But her little mind was blown because already at 5, she's being sold on this lie as a woman, as a girl, that she needs to be perfect and that's how people will love her. That's what we're going to talk about today on the podcast, because recently I shared with you guys some of my regrets, maybe from 2019, some mistakes that I saw I had made that I was learning from and growing as a person now. And someone commented saying something like, talking about my mistakes and how I had quote unquote ruined things. And it got me to thinking, because I've looked at them as mistakes, sure, but that didn't mean it was negative to me. That didn't mean I ruined anything. So it was interesting to hear this other person's perspective, because when she heard me talk about my mistakes, she thought that it was horrible, right? She took it as a negative. She took it as ruining things and all these horrible things happening, right? And in my mind, as the person who had been through it and had looked back and said, here are the lessons I've learned, I didn't view it as horrible. And I wanted to talk to you guys about that today, because this ties into that lie of being perfect that women have in particular. I think everybody does, but women in particular, when we look at our choices or look at our past selves and think, ugh, that was a mistake. Wow, you really messed that up. Like blah, blah, blah. That negative self-talk that we have. What role are we taking in our lives? We're taking the judge role, right? Where you're showing up as the judge in your life to say, that was good, that was bad. That was good, that was bad. When you show up in this judge role, which stems from all or nothing thinking, which I talked about on an IGTV the other day, which is basically like things either have to be good or bad, it does not produce positive things for you. And it is your choice to continue to show up in this judge role or not. So some things I'm going to give you as examples of negative things that showing up in the judge role will produce for you in your life. So when we show up in the judge role, we will, for number 1, do this to others. We'll show up as the judge of them too. How we show up to ourselves is always how we show up to others. And most likely, we started showing up as this judge role for ourselves because somebody else showed up as the judge role for us, right? But it does not mean you have to continue to take that lens. It does not mean you have to continue to take that role. Number 1, it causes us to judge other people. Number 2, it blocks our ability to see the gifts and the lessons. I looked back at last year and saw hard things that I went through and saw ways that I wouldn't show up now, but I wouldn't change it. I saw it as a gift. I saw it as a lesson. I saw it as exactly what needed to happen to grow me to who I am today. I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't have gone through last year. And making mistakes does not make you a horrible person, right? And when we show up in that judge role and we see it as mistake, good or bad, we then project that as that person being good or bad, right? So we can think of ourselves as good or bad when we make those mistakes. So number 2, it blocks your ability to see the gifts and the lessons. Instead of seeing the gifts and the lessons, you're just going to see it as you effed up. Number 3, it produces bitterness, anger, blame, criticism, shame, right? Only negative emotions that don't serve you. They just make you really unhappy and miserable. Because to be quite honest, we think we like to judge, but we only like to judge because it makes us feel like we have some sort of power, right? And it doesn't actually make us feel good to be in the judge role. Here's why. Point number 4. it puts you in a losing situation. Whether it's yourself that you're judging or it's someone else that you're judging, when you live in the land of someone has to be right and someone has to be wrong, you lose. You will always lose when you have to be right or wrong. So, I have a question for you guys as you think about this. Whose job is it to judge? Because it's probably not yours, right? And if you're like me, you're going to say it's God's. It's God's job to judge. And if you don't believe it's God's job to judge and you think it's yours, I would take it a step farther and I would say, who is the ultimate judge? Then you'll probably say God or source or higher power or whatever. So when you realize that it is not your place to be stepping into this judge role of yourself or of other people, it lets you off the hook. It lets you off the hook of being perfect, and it allows you to let everybody else off the hook of being perfect too. Because we don't want to keep projecting that onto other people too, right? We don't want to be the judge of everybody else because that will constantly make us feel like people are not living up to our expectations. When we just live in judge role of other people, it ruins our relationships. There's a good use of that word, ruin. It will taint your relationships because people won't ever be able to measure up to your unwritten rule book of life, right? So here's a couple questions you can start asking yourself when you find yourself in judge role. What lens am I viewing this situation from? Because it's always a lens that's determining how you're seeing this situation. Not everybody sees it the same way. Some people see it completely opposite of you. And it's all based on your lens. This goes back to a lot of the work that I do with my clients and basing and figuring out their lenses that they developed years ago when they were kids. A lot of times it's lenses like, I am nothing. I'm not valuable. I have to prove I'm worth people's time, right? And then we always look through that lens and it taints how we see everything. And it taints how we see other people. And we only will look for proof to back that lens up. So we will miss everything else about people, which is why taking judge role is so dangerous because we're taking it from a tainted lens. So if I don't like how I feel, how can I change my perspective and at least become neutral about this? Because remember, you guys, your opinion is always your source of suffering, not the person or the situation itself. Your perspective on it is what causes your feelings, not the person or the situation itself. And this is not about being right or standing on your rights. This is about saying, do I want to change the way I feel about myself and about other people? Do I like feeling all these negative emotions? Do I like feeling hatred, anger, bitterness? Do I like feeling that I've been wronged by a bunch of people? If I don't want to feel that way anymore, then I will take radical responsibility for my perspective, even if they did wrong me. Because that is the path to freedom. And that will get you out of judge role. That is how you get out of judge role. And you can instead let yourself off the hook. And when you let yourself off the hook, you can let other people off the hook. This is how you stop buying into the lie about being perfect. And you can start looking back at your past self and seeing the mistakes you made as gifts, as lessons. And an exercise that will help, which my coach recently gave me, is to look back at the you that you go, oh, ugh, like I'm so glad I'm not that girl anymore. Or like, ugh, I can't believe I was that girl. Or I can't believe I did that. Look back at that girl, find pictures if you can, and admire her. Tell her how awesome she was. Tell her what a good job she did. Tell her how much you love her and how much she was a freaking badass and how she was literally doing something awesome because you wouldn't be here today without her. So find how you can admire yourself, the painful versions of you, because it's only when you can do that for yourself that you can do that for others. How you show up for yourself is how you show up for others. So that is the message for today. I hope that helped you guys get out of judge roll so that you can start feeling more fulfilled and happy and content and peaceful and less criticizing of other people. Go have a beautiful day. I love you all. Thank you for listening in.